what I've planned is taking you through how to enhance reading and why do you think it's important. And before that, I'd just like to share this very important. Some of you have seen this before. Kavita ma'am would relate to it also because they all love this KWL chart. Remember, ma'am? I'd share that with you, all of you. Yeah, so it's just a reinforcement because there's so many new teachers on board and I would like to acquaint them with that chart. And it works wonderfully well with your primary children especially. Okay, it's called KWL chart, knowing what they already know. Okay, asking the child what he already knows about a topic. See, remember, it's a learner-centered approach now. It's not a teacher-centered approach we have adopting anymore in our teaching methodology. So we need to tell the children and ask them what they probably know about the topic you are going to take up. So it's a good idea. The whole thing is the same, that you discuss the topic, taking them from known to unknown. Okay. So you must acquaint the child with what you're planning to take up in that particular session that day. Okay. And a good thing is to do some sort of a prior homework so that you tell them tomorrow we will take up this topic. Please read and come. A pre-reading at home, a silent reading at home goes a long way. But then give them a little time to read in the class as well, because silent reading goes a long way in helping them to comprehend what you're trying to tell them right after the reading. Some of them would have read, some of them might not have read. Okay, that's okay. The child forgets or whatever, he might be having some more engagements once he reaches home. It's okay. Okay, tell them to read the next day and come. So, 1 minute, I'll just set it up. Okay. So, I don't know why it's going to my WhatsApp, but I'll try to share anyway. No. 1 second. I have put the link in the chat. Yeah, it's coming here. Don't mind the ad because it's just not getting it. Yeah.
KWL chart.
So this is again a pictorial representation. If you're not able to hear it for any reason because of your audio, whatever, I'll be posting it in the group right away, right after the class. So don't worry, try to figure out from the subheadings what they're trying to tell. Okay. So this is a chart which will help you to take your teaching strategies to another level. Okay.
A teaching strategy. Let's give quick credit to Donna Ogle, who's credited with coming up.
Are you able to see and hear? Thumbs up.
Uses three-part organizer to engage,
fine.
guide, and review. Now, why should teachers use KWL charts? KWL charts are great at involving students in the learning goal.
These charts help you in writing your lesson plan, framing the curriculum, framing your question answers, framing your lesson plans for the day. Okay, so if you categorize everything under this chart, it'll help you a long way in doing your work efficiently. Okay,
because it directly asks them to identify what they want to know. Students understand and clearly identify the learning objective. Students must consider and evaluate what they already know about the topic on hand. Students hypothesize as well as activate prior knowledge in completing the chart. The way the chart is constructed, students finish up by summarizing what they know.
So supposing you're taking up a grammar topic, okay, as simple as nouns. There is no harm in asking them what they already know or remember about this grammar topic. Chances are that 50% of them would have forgotten what are nouns in the done in the previous class. Okay, so it's a good idea to bring them again back to the same page and give a basic introduction, like how you would talk to a class 1 child While introducing a grammar topic, go from class 1 to the class which you are teaching again and again. Okay, don't expect them to know and feel disheartened if you don't remember what are these grammar topics all about. It's okay. Remember, the child is doing 101 topics in every subject every day. You are taking up only one subject. He's taking up 8 subjects. Okay, so think from that perspective and start from what he already knows and make him comfortable and well acquainted with what you want to teach.
Already know and reviewing the material. Students get a chance to reflect on everything they have learned. Next up, how do we use KWL charts? Here is the way a fellow teacher and friend uses KWL charts. The first thing you have to do is print copies of KWL charts. Make sure all students have a copy. Next, you begin your lesson, write on the board what we know, want to know, and have learned on the board. Then you ask them a question. What do you already know about the topic? Here, you give students a chance to write it down on their papers. Next, ask them to share what they wrote. And then as they share with you, you can write it on the board. Then ask them the question, what do you want to know? Again, give them time to write it down on their paper. Students can then share their want to know with the class and the teacher can write it down on the board. At this point, the teacher begins answering those questions. Teachers should allow for open discussions. Now, talk with your class what you have learned. Then begin writing it on the whiteboard. And lastly, let the students write what they have learned on their own KW.
So you remember learning objective and learning outcome? Your students will do it for you. Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
objective is that we want to know this in the lesson. And outcome is, have you learned all that? Have you understood everything successfully? So it gives us a whole lot of insight. It is just the same thing organized and put in a very, very concise manner, rather than beating around the bush and trying to find out what is happening. So when you categorize your learning and your planning into this kind of a chart, you also become very sure about what you are out to deliver and have you finished your, have you kind of, as a child assimilated that information, have you finished your objective, what you set out for in the beginning, up to your satisfaction. Okay, so this is exactly what this chart will do for you.
KWL chart papers. Now, here's an actual example. Let's say the topic of the day is the great Martin Luther King Jr. Write the topic at the top.
You could do it closer to home
Then
with
you could
Mahatma
write
Gandhi. Yeah.
What I know, what I want to know, what I have learned. Maybe the students know about the I Have a Dream speech. They know that he is a civil rights activist. And they know that his holiday is in January. Maybe some questions they have are, did he ever get arrested? Also, they ask, how did he help out African Americans? And for the last part, you answer the question about whether or not he went to jail, along with the reason why. Here, you also have to write the important information, such as the bus boycotts, his political influence, and his use of nonviolence. So right now, I want to say thank you for your time. Subscribe to the channel.
So you could actually subscribe to the channel. I'm not advocating or I'm not his, this thing, but I really like to explore and research on my own. Okay, so I think before this, if you remember, Kavita ma'am, I had shown you the chart, but I came across this video very recently which explains exactly what it is all about. Yes, so it gives us a better insight when we have some visual inputs and simulation also. Yes, so see, this takes care of everything that you need to know. Your learning objective, learning outcome, what the children want to know. You can answer their questions, put them, categorize them, ask them to explore. You can find out and tell them. You could try this with your current Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, or you could try this with Mahatma Gandhi ji. Children are very familiar with these personalities. Or you could try that with any sports personality which you think that children might be aware of, close to hand, even about there's somebody in their own family or somebody around the closer circle. Okay, so if you're dealing with a topic which can be categorized into these three categories, it's amazing. It's an amazing way to put your thoughts in order. Okay, and your teaching strategies become more precise, and you have the objective in mind, you have the outcome in mind, and you also want to know, if you want to know what the child wants to know, you also have that in front of you. So ask each one of them, then pick out the common questions, and you could do that. Now this can also be a lunch break activity. Sometimes we don't have time during the class, and these kind of activities might make noise because they want to know what the friend is writing, okay, or what he should write. So this takes care of his mental faculties also, where he learns to understand and assess what he wants to know. Now this is more in sync with the IB syllabus, okay, the IB schools, if you've heard of all the international schools, okay, it's a must there. It's a part of their curriculum. But why I'm introducing you all this here is, slowly, if you notice the new NEP, the new policy, which CBSE is trying to bring it in our curriculum, 90%, in fact, 99% of the points are regarding all these IB, highlights only. Whatever IB highlights is what they are trying to put in, making it more practical for the Indian, students to adopt. Because the reason being, we very rarely give the child to assess what's going on in his mind. We only want him to know what's going on in our mind and try to put all that in his mind. Am I right? We very rarely ask the child what is going on in your mind. Now, what CBSE and IB and all the Harvard and all these teachers want to tell you is, please find out what is happening in his mind. He might be, juggling with something, or might be having brighter ideas. How will you discover? We never knew about Sharda ma'am till we spoke to her. Correct? And one more day and she would have gone unnoticed, because the camera is not on and she hasn't interacted much. She's telling us about her inhibitions about technology, which is absolutely fine. We all have that. Even now, I struggle in the morning for 2 minutes to load my content, to make sure everything is working, to make sure that you can all see. We all have struggles. Okay, that's okay. That should not, keep us down forever. We'll learn and march forward. That's all. Okay, so this kind of a chart becomes very necessary for us in CBSE setup also, because our approach has to turn from teacher-centric lecture method to student-centric activity-way method. Imagine so many years back, if I tell you the years, I don't want to tell you my age. Okay, you have to guess. I was taught in the IB method years back. I never had exams till 8th standard. We were only taught by activities. So many topics. Because my school principal was a foreigner who used to visit IB schools every summer and bring the best in our school at that time. It was a one of its kind experiential school so many years back, which advocated experiential learning. Probably that's why I relate to all these topics so well. They kind of come naturally to me. So why I'm trying to tell you this is, you will have an actively engaged class. All the students will be with you if you introduce any activity. They learn so much by conducting that activity. And 90% of the concepts are put in effortlessly if you give them, tell them something in their language. What are children? They are inquisitive. They are full of questions. Okay, now if you give them this chart, they will list down what they want to know. It's up to you to filter all that. See, you might not be able to take up everything that they write. What happens in IB is there are only 7 children in a class. So you can note down all the requirements of those 7 children. But in a class of 40, it is not possible to cater to each child's need and inquisitive nature. And so what you can do is, pick up the common ones and mention the ones which you feel are standing out. Okay, and then answer. It'll require a lot of survey, but ask some of the volunteers to do it. I've tried this in my class. Okay, ask the ones who are really, quick to calculate. Say, okay, 10, 10, 10, 4 children. That's all. Write down the common points, and you have the data in front of you. They handle the data so well. You taught them data handling also, and the math teacher will thank you. You understood? So try to have, see, class 1 and 2, it might be a little difficult, but then you'll have to work a little harder with those children because you need to ask them what they want to know about the topic and what they already know and what they think about a particular story or a topic, grammar topic, or whatever you're trying to teach them. You understand? So that's how this chart really helps you. I'm telling you the practical usage of it. Okay? It's not only some jargon which I'm trying to tell you that, oh, like, you should know this. It really helps, especially in the primary classes. Okay, because what happens in sixth onwards, you can even talk to them about all this. But smaller children find it very difficult to put their ideas verbally and in the written way. So when you teach them this, even if they write words, you come to know what's their level and what's going on in their mind. In class 1 and 2, if you want to try, at least 20 will come out with some words which will help you correlate how their pattern of thinking works and what all you need to, further improvise on. So you try this, and I told you all these activities are best done now when you reopen. Okay, when you start the new academic year, you set a tone for the rest of the year. One, they know what or how to conduct themselves when you're doing something interesting. Okay, one or two are taking advantage of the fact that you're involved in something, fun. You can pull them up. There's no problem. Make sure the class is with you. Okay, and try to make it as interesting, as stimulating, as exciting as possible. They will, I'm telling you, so many parents come and tell us, ma'am, they want to study only English. They love your subject. They love the way you teach. I tell them, do science, do maths. He said, no, let me finish English first. If you make the subject worth learning for the child, automatically he'll do well. There are no two ways about it. Fine. And all those are subjective subjects. Here they have to understand so many things on their own. So if you motivate them into learning on their own, that's it. That's the purpose of your teaching, isn't it? Okay. So as promised, I finish it in 15 minutes. Okay. And I'll just share the PPT just for a recapitulation. It doesn't contain anything that you might not know. Okay. It's just a reinforcement. Fine. As teachers, and if you're joining this session for the first time, they just help you to understand why reading is really important, but it takes a back seat. Okay. Now, the basic purpose is to comprehend what you're trying to teach them, whether it's a grammar concept or a prose or a poetry or a writing skill or a speaking skill or whatever you want them to comprehend. Okay. Reading goes a long way in helping the child understand what you're trying to tell. Now, there are two things which I want to mention before I start with the PPT. One, that when they have, those comprehension passages, which should become an integral part of your assessment and worksheets. What happens is when they read short passages, see, storybooks might again be an ordeal for them. They have no time. But when you pick up passages up to your class level, for class 1, for a worksheet, you can even give more than you would probably give for assessment. There's no harm. A short story, even a short story like a rabbit and the rabbit and the tortoise, compress it into a pictorial form or a visually stimulating form. I did that with Thirsty Crow. I was taking up a set of students whose mental level was, though they were physically, biologically, like I told Ravinder, I don't know whether you were there in that meeting. They are a set of students who come from a place where they've not been very proficient in English. So I gave them the Thirsty Crow story, and that is like teaching class 1 English, no? Pictorial representation of Thirsty Crow, okay? And ask them, fill in the blanks down. That's the way you can assess and you can bring up the level of a class 1 child. Okay, give them a pictorial representation. Everything is there on the net. We are so blessed to have YouTube. We have to make use of it and the internet. Okay, make good use of it. Exploit it. It's for your, making your work so much easier. So pick up a pictorial representation of any of these common stories, okay, which the child should know at his age but hasn't been able to learn, or maybe familiar but not very sure. And ask them simple questions like, was the crow thirsty or hungry? Give them choices. Make things easier for them initially. Okay. Do you think the crow did a wise thing by putting the stones? If you were the crow, how would you have made sure that you get the water? You are thirsty, you want water. Ask them, this is your creation of Bloom's taxonomy, the creative side, where the child creates his own answer. Let him imagine, it's okay. Let him go into his world and explore. Okay, so ask him these two general questions and then the basic, very obvious ones. What is he putting? Simple ones, stones or leaves. You can ask something like that. Give him a choice in the brackets so that he finds the activity interesting enough. Take him from easy, medium, difficult level as you go along. Okay, don't expect him to say, write the story in 5 lines. He will not. He will shirk because he doesn't know how to frame. So when you ask him these simple questions when it comes to comprehension as a worksheet, okay, I'm talking about language learning at an informal level where he's not judged, where you don't give him 3 out of 5 or 5 out of 5 or 2 out of 5 or 0 out of 5. Don't mark them. You have a set of records for your own, this thing record where you know what each child's caliber is. But there's no need to give them marks for every worksheet. It's okay. If somebody asks to say, I have a record, I don't want to demotivate the child, over. No right or wrong. Next day, write the answers on the board and tell them to mark it on their own and correct it. Doesn't matter. The idea is to learn. That's the aim. That's the purpose. Okay, do these, or you could even ask a good artist to draw those pictorial, pictures on the board and frame just five questions, more than enough. Okay, of any Hare and the Tortoise. You've done with your comic strip and you've done with your art integration. Everything is done without the child even realizing that jargon. Art integration is over, creative skills are over, comprehension is over, language is over, vocabulary, give them some words. Very thirsty. See, class 1 and 2, they don't know how to formulate their thoughts into action. These kind of activities help them a lot. Okay, so that's one thing. So anybody would like to volunteer to read this slide?
Shall I read, ma'am?
Please read, start.
How to develop reading skills. How can you ensure your students understand classroom coursework? Build reading skills. Teachers love to share their favorite stories and the subjects they are passionate about. But helping a child develop the same interest requires foundational reading skills to comprehend and enjoy the curriculum.
So he's very
Many
subtly telling
students-
you that let's not put everything that we want them to know. Let's ask them also what they want to know. This is actually the implementation of the KWL chart. Okay, yeah, please start, ma'am.
Many children see reading as a core, especially if it's tied to lesson plans and learning complex information. Teachers, parents, and mentors can help ignite a child's passion to read by incorporating activities focused on building reading skills to improve comprehension and engagement.
Okay, so what is it trying to tell you? See, these slides are all the way from Harvard, okay? So they are telling us easier ways to adopt in order to make our teaching less of a burden, in order to make the learning less of a complex activity for the students, and doing it in a way that they love to do. These kind of activities, these kind of attitude changes, these kind of skills which you will incorporate in your class will help the child enjoy as he's learning and not find it like only for exam, only for this. That kind of a mental, strain should be just done away with, especially when it comes to language learning. Okay, where he knows that he's not being judged if he says a wrong sentence. Let's help him understand what he wants to say and say it in the right way, not snub them. Okay, so when you're doing reading, again, he has to, like I started with, he has to comprehend. And then he also has to skim and scan for answers. Now, based on his understanding, you have to teach him how to look for answers in a comprehension passage, right from class 1. Okay. Now, how do you do that? By helping him understand the importance of reading. Okay. That's why I told you silent reading and reading in the class loud. Once you should do the model reading, and then the students can also take up. It is very, very important, and it's a much ignored skill, which is one of the most important skills when it comes to language learning. Okay, they don't read. And one more thing you need to tell them is when they're reading the question paper, they need to learn how to read the headings properly so that they know what is to be answered. What is the question, especially the grammar headings. They skip the headings and go to the question and I don't know what they have to answer. 90% of the time this happens. And even the best of students lose marks because they haven't read whether to give 2 examples of a past tense or this tense or that subject or what is the question asking. They don't even bother to read that. Okay, so when you develop that reading carefully skill in the class and tell them observe, understand, comprehend and read, 90% of your language problems will be solved because they've learned to understand and comprehend the text given. Okay, so reading is of utmost importance. Okay, then who would like to read this slide?
Shall I, ma'am?
Please tell your name and read.
Deepa from KRS, ma'am.
Okay, please start.
Annotate and highlight text. Teach your students to highlight and underline valuable information as they read.
This is
Have
what is skimming
students-
and scanning.
Yes,
They read the question. First, tell them to read it for pleasure. Then tell them to read the questions once again. Okay. And then when they're reading this, I told you for listening skill also, when they are doing it the second time, they should have all the answers in front of them. To that extent, you have to develop their concentration levels. Okay. Yes, ma'am, continue.
Have students write notes on the pages they are reading to help them stay focused and improve comprehension. Students can also write down questions as they read to receive more explanation on a new concept or to define a new word.
Yes, thank you, ma'am. So, like I was telling you about a rupee goes a long way yesterday, remember? I taken up that topic. If you've taught that in your class 5 books, there is a series of events that happens in the story. So give them a pictorial representation where, you have to break down the facts. So I told him Ranji, like this boy goes to multiple people to find out where they can get a decent coin to buy a sweet jalebi. Okay. So what he does is he goes to his friend Mohinder Singh, takes a fishing rod, then he goes. So I tell them to do a pictorial representation of these people in a continuous way wherever they find place in the textbook, so that when they go back to it, when they're revising and they try to comprehend the story on their own, they know everything in a logical sequence. Some stories need that kind of attention from us. Okay, some stories are very simple and they manage to comprehend on their own also. So whatever information you're trying to tell them, please tell them to make a mind map. You are all aware of what is a mind map? You're all aware, right? So a mind map helps them to put things in the right perspective, put the logical sequence of events. You could even give them a jumbled sequence of events, in some of the stories. Just write 5 sentences in a jumbled way and tell them to put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the correct order. some stories might be comprehended in this way. Depends on the topic. Okay. So there are lots of techniques to help them understand the story in the text or whatever you're dealing with in a better way. Okay. In our poetry, there was this poem, The Last of the Bluebird. Long time back. Okay. That was one of the Oxford books. That also I had broken down into fragments and told them. So wherever you feel your child might have a difficulty in understanding the text, break it down into smaller portions. Okay. Put them in fragments where they understand in, set of, categorize them in a logical sequence in say about 4 to 5 or maximum 6 sentences and ask them to understand it. What will come first, second, third, fourth. So this helps them to understand and comprehend after reading the lesson in a better way. Okay. So this is exactly what they're trying to tell you. Any doubts on this? Have you understood? Okay. So personalize the content. Now this is again a very important way to make the child understand a lot of personal questions. Okay. What if this character had not done like this? What if you were stranded? What if you were the same person? Would you have reacted in the same way? So it kind of opens up the knots in the child's mind. Okay. And it connects with the characters in a very nice, in a very systematic way. Okay, so they can increase their understanding by seeing how the material connects with their life. Okay, supposing you're talking about a child who's been somewhere. Okay, the story says, okay, I went there and this happened. So you bring it closer to their life and ask them, have they ever experienced something like this? Okay, even if it's a little out of the way, let them speak. It's a good idea to devote at least 1/4 of your teaching time in 40 minutes in talking to them. Unless you do that, you don't know whether you made any sort of connection with your class, whether they're able to understand what you're writing, speaking, reading, listening, telling them all the time. Okay, you can also help students comprehend the text by helping them to see an association with the current events. So when you were doing prose, can you recollect when Priya ma'am was doing prose, can you recollect any incident where you could make a personal connect with the contemporary situation? Any story? How many of you taking class 5 here?
Ma'am, and the poem, books poem, ma'am.
Yeah, books form. Okay, excellent. So how do you make a personal connect with the students with that, ma'am? Any idea?
Yeah, have you ever felt the same?
Have you
That
ever felt the
books,
same? Yes.
when you are reading a book, whether you are physically present and mentally absent, you will be sailing in the characters. You will be sailing. You will be in the different world, imaginative world. Have you ever felt like that?
Okay, excellent. So that is the one very good way of making a personal connect, and ask them to write whatever they feel on a page. Okay, now what happens is ultimately all these 4 skills, which I'll do tomorrow, the writing skill, all these 3 skills lead to a better acquisition of knowledge when it comes to writing. Eventually, all of them have to write. That's the way we assess, and that's the way they have to do it all their life. Okay. So when you take care of your reading, listening, and speaking, writing comes naturally. So when you ask them to write what they've read on the side, okay, something important which you have written on the board or a mind map, they understand it so much better, you know. Their entire, they like to see the logic of everything, okay. Even in English, they try to find logic. So when you give them that kind of a, frame in which to put their questions and answer, they understand the entire text very well. Okay. So practice problem solving skills. Now, what are these problem solving skills? Blend real world problem solving skills into your curriculum. Okay. Have your students write out solutions to the problem and discuss their ideas as a class. Now, I've kept this as a very important slide in your reading skills where you are helping them do the critical thinking, do the evaluation, do the creation, all that we have tried to put in these sessions Bloom's taxonomy, critical thinking, experiential learning by giving this activity. If you were the character, what would you have done? Okay. If do you think the character solved his problem in the right way? Was there any other way? Could he have done this? Could he have done that? Ask. Okay. And discuss the ideas. Tell them volume should not go beyond 10. Okay. If you go beyond 10, I'll have to mute you. You speak to them in that language, they will understand. Okay. So have them discuss the character sketch of each character in the story in this way. Do you think he solved this issue in the right way? Do you think there could have been a better way? Do you think you would have done it some other way? When you ask them such questions, automatically a child's brain gets conditioned towards taking problems in their stride and finding out solutions rather than getting stressed out and going towards a negative mood. You understand? So you must bring it out in the open in the classroom at a in a very candid way. The child should not feel that you're giving him a question and asking, what do you feel? What do you do? Ask them subtly, would you have done like this? Okay, how many of you think this way? If one of the students differs, why do you differ? Do you think you could have done in this way? Do you think the protagonist did the right thing? You know, so automatically their mind has started solving issues on their own, and they're less complicated when they grow up, more accommodating, more adept to solving problems which otherwise somebody else will struggle. We are constantly facing problems in our lives, right? So why not start equipping them, empowering them, motivating them to solve them on their own? Okay, now what should we do? If you saw the first video which I sent that day one, what do you think? Do you think you can do this? Okay, try out. You remember how the teacher motivated that girl to solve the problem on her own? He just asked, do you think? You remember or no? How many of you have still not seen that video? It takes 20 minutes. When you're free, just listen to that. That is a mantra of being a good teacher, okay? Do you think this is exactly what he's saying here? Learn to teach them how to solve their problems on their own. You're just a facilitator. You're not you're not Hitler, okay? You're just a facilitator. They will do well. Definitely they will do well in your class because you have their question answer script in front of them. But what about life skills? Remember, life ready. Okay, so this is one very important slide. Then set reading goals, okay? Sandhya ma'am, would you like to read this slide?
Okay, ma'am. Set reading goals. Have each student set their own reading goals. This can help them take action in building reading skill, and students will be more mindful of how they are improving.
So if they have any issues in punctuation and grammar and vocabulary or not stopping after a full stop, tell them this is the way to read. Next time read a little more attentive, okay? And tell them after 1 week I'm going to ask you to read again. There should be some improvement. Ask them to read again. You can ask them to record their voice also. Ask them to read also on their own at home. Okay, I tell them you should read in your room, and your mother should be able to hear you in the kitchen to that level, and she should be able to correct you from there that here you made a mistake. That level you should be comfortable and clear and yeah, you can read the next part, ma'am.
Reading portions. Long, complex reading can be more digestible by breaking up into pieces.
Like I told you just now, yeah.
Shorter segments will help students retain the information as the class discusses the materials. It can also help students build confidence in understanding a complex subject.
So a complex subject could be again complex for some and very easy for the rest. But since we're working for all the 40, it's a good idea to elicit answers from the students and ask them to process it and put it in the correct categories. Now there are lots of exercises after every lesson. Some of them you could also devise, like match the following, or putting the story, like I told you, putting the story into logical sequence. Give them only 5 sentences is the best way to understand a story, especially for class 1, 2, and 3, where they have difficulty in comprehending the subject itself. Okay, so you can try to do that. You'll have to do a little extra work. That's okay. When you sit down to do it, it hardly take you 10, 15 minutes maximum. You can even do it prior to the class or in the class. But the idea is that you break it into, break it into a mind map sort of a concept where the child, even an average child, understand what exactly you're trying to convey. Your teaching is not going to be very effective if you just read it and give them question answers like some of us, or like the traditional way suggested. Okay, so today's student wants to know, has so many doubts, has so many interesting incidents to share, has so much going on in their or his or her mind. We have to help them to bring that out, and we have to make sure that the child gets his time. So whenever he tries to deviate also a little, it's okay. Give them 1 or 2 minutes and then help them come back. Okay. So say it should be contextual, but if you want to share something else also, it's fine. Believe me, by all these methodologies, you're an English teacher, remember. Okay, then your job will be done in a better way. Fine. So let's read the last slide. Let students guide their reading. Let them understand where they're going wrong. Let them realize how to go about with things. Okay. So would anybody like to read? Indu ma'am. Indu ma'am has never opened. Yeah. Who's? If you're saying can I read, please tell me your name.
Revati ma'am here.
Okay, Revati ma'am, start.
Let students guide their reading. Your students process reading material. Your students process reading material and curriculum in very different ways. As you implement reading activities to help your class learn complex materials, you will learn what works best for each student individually. Shall I proceed, ma'am?
Yes, ma'am.
As teachers implement more reading activities into classroom coursework, students will find improvement in vocabulary, writing skills, problem solving, concentration, and cognitive development to help build a solid foundation for future learning.
So reading becomes of utmost importance because the whole idea is to help them understand the language skills. You understand? Not only the text. See, they might forget the text, they might forget what you taught them in that particular story. But if you associate it with an interesting incident which stays with them, or you associate it with something that they connect with, okay? And then you also stress on the language skills. They will forget the story probably, but they'll never forget what you've taught them, shared with them. And the language. See, in every class, you don't start with A, B, C, D again, no? They've learned that. In every class, you don't start with simple words which you expect them to know. We only start building the vocabulary as you go along, isn't it? So you have to see again KWL chart, what they probably already know. Okay, and ask them, would you like to learn more about this topic? Okay, let's find out. Tomorrow you also brainstorm, you also Google search, I'll also do that. Let's see how we can put this. Work as a team, it's okay. Okay, when you involve them and give them the respect as an individual who is willing, to share his ideas, who has a mind of his own, respect him for that. okay? And let them share their point of view. When you treat them as somebody who has every right to express themselves, you will see a major change in their language acquisition, character building. That is what we've set out for. It's not only language, there's so much more in our books to teach them apart from language skills. Eventually, they will all learn that.